Welcome to the Middleware Tech YouTube channel. In this series, you'll learn about types of web service. All code examples used in the videos will be available on GitHub. Let's get started.
One type we find how we can create a web service. Based on that, we find two types of approaches there. Web service creation approach. One is called bottom up, another is called top down. The example that just now we have done, this is a bottom up approach. Top down approach we have not yet done. We'll do it. Okay. So that we'll do it there. One of the things left. Fine. Now I'm talking about types of web service based on communication. Last time we talked about types of web service based on creation. Right? Okay. So how we can see here is that there is two types of web service. One is called synchronous web service. Fine. Another is called asynchronous web service. Synchronous web service. So there is two types of web service. One is called synchronous web service. Another is called asynchronous web service. So how you can define? Like synchronous means if I send a request, I should get immediate reply. That means for each request there is immediate reply. That type of web service is called synchronous web service. What I'm saying, for each request there is immediate reply. So asynchronous web service means for each request there is not immediate reply. Sometimes there is no reply. I'm coming to asynchronous communication. So for each request there is an immediate reply. As for example, you want to send a request. You're doing a login successful. You're making a request for reservation. Reservation is done. Those things we can implement using web service, right? So for each request, sending a request, you got the immediate reply. Those comes under synchronous web service, right? Okay. So asynchronous web service. Then how we can say asynchronous web service? For each request, control web service. For each request, there is. You can write in your own language. For each request, no immediate reply. I can define like this. What does it mean by this? Meaning is that asynchronous request actually comes into two categories. One is called fire and forget, FF. Fire and forget. As for example, assume ICICI Bank want to send an SMS to its 10,000 customer about its own service, so that it will send a SMS to the 10,000 customers in Bangalore. So, or any particular location, and the bank not at all worry about whether that SMS has gone to the customer or not. That means bank server it does not want it is not waiting for any reply from the client that whether it has gone to the client or not, right? It is one type of broadcasting, right? That is called fire and forget. So this is one type of asynchronous communication we can implement, right? This is an example of asynchronous communication, fire and forget. That means there are no reply at all, right? Okay. Another type of asynchronous communication that we define, it is called fire, wait, and callback. Fire, wait, and callback. And callback, assume you have sent, you want to go to home, if you're not actual location in your native location. So you are going to home the next week. So you have sent a request leave request to your manager, but unfortunately your manager is also on leave, so automatically after 1 day the leave request will be forwarded to the immediate manager. After 1 day the request will be forwarded to the immediate manager, right? After 1 day the request will be forwarded to the immediate manager, right? So the thing is that when you send a request, when you have sent a request, the response is not, you're not going to get immediately. After some time you'll get the response. Same like that. So if it is a scenario, then this type of scenario comes under asynchronous communication: fire, wait, and callback. Fire, wait, and callback. So asynchronous web service comes into two categories: fire and forget, and fire, wait, and callback. Fine. So this is the difference between synchronous web service and asynchronous web service. Fine. Okay. Now the question is, how we categorize synchronous web service. The example of synchronous web service, like we can define SOAP-based web service comes under synchronous web service. SOAP and REST both. REST. So SOAP-based request, SOAP web service, and REST web service both comes under synchronous web service. That means using SOAP and REST we can implement synchronous web service. Right? Okay. So what about how we can implement asynchronous web service? To implement asynchronous web service, there's no specific name. We use some API. So if I want to implement SOAP request, SOAP web service, I have to use some API. What are the API I have to use? For to implement SOAP-based web service, I have to use some API that is called JAX RPC API. Okay, now we'll see what is this JAX RPC API. RPC full name is Remote Procedure Call. The corresponding API name is JAX RPC API. So API is one type of a specification. As I just now told you that JVM is one type of a specification. So if I have that JVM API if I have a JVM API specification, then multiple vendors coming with their own product. Oracle came with Hotspot compiler. BA Systems came with the JRocket. So both the compiler that is created by the vendor, that is based on the JVM API specification, right? Same like that. For web service communication also, we have one of the API specification called JAX RPC API specification. So this is an API specification. Based on that, multiple vendor comes and implement their web service based on JAX API specification. We'll come into those details after some time. So if I want to implement SOAP web service, I can use two API specification. Whatever web service you will find throughout the world, they're going to use any one of these two API specification. One is called JAX RPC API specification, and the is called JAX WS API specification. Any one of the API specification they have to use to implement SOAP-based web service. Whatever web service you will find throughout the world, SOAP-based web service, they will come under these two categories. Right? No, now REST I have not told you anything. I'll come. But if I want to implement a REST-based web service, I have to use any one of the specification. The specification name is JAX RS API specification. I have to follow this API specification when I'm going to create a REST web service. Right? Okay. So all the synchronous web service will come under this category. Right? Okay. Now, what about this asynchronous web service? What about this asynchronous web service? Asynchronous web service, if I want to implement, then I can use one of the specification. The name of the specification is JAX-M API specification. Now, this JAX-M API specification, you can implement asynchronous web service, but this was not. It was a long back. As for example, JAX RPC came from JDK 1.4 version. From this version is available from. Then JAX WS API specification, and this one came from JDK 1.5 version. Okay, you can check. And then JAX RS API specification, it came from JDK 1.6 version. Okay, like this way it came. So, and whatever the asynchronous web service, this JAXM API specification, it came long back. It is not today's. It is came long back. It is came from Java 1.4 itself. But if we can if we implement any asynchronous communication with the help of JAXM API specification, you'll find that lots of complexities there. It is and based on performance, scalability, interoperability. So cost point of view, lots of issues are there with JAXM API specification. That's why industry is not using this API specification to implement asynchronous communication. MS API, that is full name is Java Messaging Services. So Java Messaging Services, you'll use two types of communication: topic and queue, and publish and subscribes, right? So it is one type of messaging framework. So this JMS API specification actually used to implement asynchronous communication. Okay. So the thing is that first time JAXM came, but it is not used by industry, is rejected by the industry. Now all the product that came from Oracle, IBM, HP, and whoever the different vendors is there, as you know that every year in the time July, August, that time all the product release comes from different vendor and W3C consortium. So all the product they are using a JMS API specification to implement asynchronous communication. Okay, and if you see our Oracle WebLogic server, that is also using JMS API specification to implement asynchronous web service, right? So if you see here, all the web service communication here, all the web service communications we have categorized into this template. Either they will be synchronous or asynchronous. So if they're asynchronous, API specification should be JMS. If they're synchronous, then API specification should be in this three. For REST, JAX RPC, JAX WS. For SOAP, JAX RPC, JAX WS. And for REST, JAX RS. Right? So this is how it is now, right? Okay. So now we have to understand the example just now we have done. So the example just now we have done, we have to understand about this example. So it is based on which specification. What we have done, we have created the server side, you have created the client side, we find web services running fine, okay, good, fun, but we should know some internal things also. So the web service that we have done, it is based on which specification? If it is one type of SOAP web service, fine. So which one it is? Right? Those things we should know, right? Right? So the example that we have done, that is based on JAX RPC API specification. JAX RPC API. Okay, so how to understand? Now, just now I told you that this is an API specification, and this is an API specification. API specification means different vendor come with their product, right? So under SOAP we have JAX API RPC. You're talking about JAX RPC API specification, fine. So let's talk about JAX RPC API specification. SPEC specification provider. Talking about JAX RPC API specification provider. So who are the provider? So provider, I'm just writing the name. First is Axis One, is one of the provider from Apache. Second one is, tell me. Second one, we can say WebLogic implementation from BEA or from Oracle, because as you know that in 2010 Oracle acquired BEA Systems. So all the product of BEA Systems comes under Oracle, right? Either it's a BEA WebLogic server becomes Oracle WebLogic server. BEA Aqualogic Service Bus become Oracle Service Bus. BEA JRocket, that also came under Oracle, right? So, right? Okay. So WebLogic implementation from BEA. Then we have number 3. We have JBoss implementation from Red Hat. Fine. Okay. Next we have 4 JAX RPC RI implementation. So this JAX RPC RI implementation is from Sun. Right? Okay. So we have multiple implementation provider is there. So if you're creating a JAX RPC web service today, then you are using any one of the implementation provider from this list, right? Okay. Right. Okay. So the example that we have done just now, it is based on which implementation? So if you see here, the example that we have done just now, what you have done, you have created a web service here. What you have done, just see here, you have just selected this one, right click, new. When you're creating this web service, I'm not creating once again, I'll just showing you here. I'm creating the web service. If you see here, you'll find Tomcat server that you have to connect. On the other side, you'll find here web service runtime. Under web service runtime, you'll find Apache Access 2, CXF, and Access. Access is nothing but Access 1 I'm talking about here. If you say Access, that is also fine. Now they have given 3 implementation here. So out of this 3 implementation, this Eclipse by default comes with Apache Access. Other 2 is they have given the name, but the corresponding libraries are not available inside the Eclipse. But for Apache Access, the corresponding libraries is available with Eclipse. So when I'm creating this web service, then I'm using this Apache Access version. Web service runtime is Apache Access. So this web services runtime is nothing but JAX RPC specification provider Access. If I say Access, sometimes you use Access 1. So this is nothing but Access 1 implementation from Apache. This one I'm going to use to create a web service. Right, and if you have selected OK, then you're moving next. Then here you're now here client type. I'm coming into the client type. You're moving next, coming into those things. Okay, leave it. I'm not moving next, and finished. Like this, you're getting the web service, right? So the example that I want to show, I want to say that you're going to use Access 1 implementation. The web service that I have created here, that is based on Access 1 implementation. Correct? Okay. Right? Okay. So next, or you can make it Access 1. We use Access 1 and Access 2 like this. So now similarly, you can create a web service using WebLogic also implementation. You can create web service using JBoss implementation or JAX RPC RI implementation. All are the JAX RPC API specification provided. Any one of the provider you can use to create a web service. In this example, I have used Access 1 implementation to provide access, because this Access 1 is coming by default with your Eclipse. So I don't have to download the jars. All the jars is coming by default Eclipse. That's why That's why you just move next web service created. Fine. Now the question is, what is the use of this implementation? What they are doing? I'm saying that when I'm going to create JAX RPC API specification provider JAXIS 1. Now the question is what they're doing, right? I'm saying that I'm creating an WebLogic implementation provider to from BA systems. Now the question is that what they are doing, correct? So we have to understand the task of this providers, right? So to understand the task of this provider, what we have to know, we have to go to the next step. The next step is we have to understand web application internal architecture. Okay, so minimize, just make the mic in mute mode from your side so that will not disturb others. Okay, so what we talked about still now is that how we can create an application. Then we talked about web service, types of web service based on communication, synchronous web service and asynchronous web service. And we talked about, since we are using the first example, JAX RPC API specification. So JAX RPC API specification, the example that we have done, that is an EMI calculation web service. That web service we have done based on JAX API specification. And these are some of the examples of JAX RPC providers. And out of this, we have used Axis One implementation, correct? Right. Now let's see. We should know some more details about it. What is the task of these implementation provider? What they are doing, right? So to understand it, we should know some more details into our existing web application internal architecture. So just see here, please. I'm just talking the same example. Some